Eric Cartman may be the least sympathetic guy on television. I mean, just look at the things he does.
I made you eat your parents.
Yeah, I'm still trying to scrub that one from my brain. Therapy bills, anyone? I'm a starving artist. But hey, even the greatest masterminds have their off days, and when things go south for Cartman, well, let's just say they tend to plummet straight into the abyss. In season 14, episode 6, Cartman's infamous culinary masterpiece, From Scott Tenorman Must Die, comes back to haunt him.
Revenge is a dish best served chili. Scott Tenorman?
In the flesh, and not exactly looking good, for obvious reasons. So the episode where this unholy reunion occurs is titled 201, and that's pretty much the least weird thing about this episode. It all kicks off with the story of a certain war veteran named Mitch Connor, who just so happens to be Cartman's puppet hand. Literally. After a mortgage filled with military service and PTSD, things pivot back to the present where Cartman is in Mr. Garrison's office demanding an answer to his age-old question of who his father is.
That's right. Tell me the truth.
All I can tell you, Eric, is that we were all told to stick to the story.
Considering the usual insanity of South Park, sticking to the story feels like the least believable part here. The plot spirals further into weirdness where the camera pans outside and surprise, surprise, South Park is in trouble again. Turns out someone has once again ticked off the gingers of the town who are now locked in a standoff with the rest of the townsfolk.
You said you wanted we got him for you.
We have no way of knowing if is really in there. It could be a trick.
Yeah, so the censored name is basically Prophet Muhammad, whose appearance is also censored throughout the episode for obvious reasons. I mean, there's the uncensored version, but I think it's best that we keep it this way. The showdown results in Mecha Streisand swooping in and laying waste to South Park because apparently the Legion of Doom is also interested in the Prophet as their leader, Tom Cruise, wants to clone his appearance so that no one would mock him anymore. And that, my friends, is Trey Parker at his unhinged best. Meanwhile, Cartman, armed with the lead from Mr. Garrison, sets out to Dr. Mephisto's lab to solve his paternity mystery. Of course, this all builds to the mother of all showdowns featuring Stan and Kyle, a captured prophet, and an army of radical gingers.
Oh crap, the gingers! Gingers, no!
Safe to say, it isn't Cartman's day so far. The gingers capture Stan and Kyle while Cartman is left to confront what is easily the biggest ghost from his infamous past, Scott Tenorman. And let's just say Scott isn't exactly alright in the head, so we get the whole twisted, chilly theme park that makes Has-Been Hotel look like a children's playground. Cartman is strapped to a chair with his mom forced to watch it all go down as Scott lays some truth bombs on him.
You killed your own father, and then you fed him to your half-brother!
And that, folks, is why you don't let secrets or psychopaths fester. So basically, Cartman's whole Scott Tenorman Must Die campaign turned out to be one huge bust. And when you consider that the gingers on Scott's side were actually radicalized by Cartman in Season 9, Episode 11, Ginger Kids, it's safe to say that everything that played out so far is of Cartman's own doing.
Now eat your chili!
Yep, luckily for Cartman, the super best friends bust into Dr. Mephisto's lab just in time to stop the gingers and the Legion of Doom. Chaos ensues, Scott flies away in a chip pack, and Jesus is confused. Never thought I'd say that sentence.
I'll be back, super best friends!
Who's the creepy ginger kid?
Cartman might make heaven after all. The dust settles with Kyle delivering a censored monologue on religious extremism as Santa and Jesus chime in like it's just another Tuesday. And just like that, the fighting is over and the city is free to start rebuilding again for the 39th time. Then there's Cartman, who's busy crying his eyes out, no thanks to what he's just learned. Stan, Kyle, and Kenny try to cheer him up the best way they can, only to discover that his grief is not about what they think it's about.
My dad was Scott Tenorman's dad. Don't you guys realize what that means? My dad was a ginger!
Honestly, if you didn't see that ending coming, then you haven't seen enough of the show. Speaking of shows, up next on the list of Cartman fails is none other than Season 12, Episode 9, Breast Cancer Show Ever.
I don't want an excuse. I'm going to beat out of you.
Cartman getting beat up? Sign me the hell up. The chaos starts like any other day at South Park Elementary. Cartman's obnoxious, the class spirals into mayhem, and Mr. Garrison probably wonders why he didn't just stick with accounting. But today, the bullseye is not on him. It's on Wendy, who's presenting a project on breast cancer.
Wendy, you need to calm down. You're gonna get your boobs all angry and they're gonna start killing everyone. Dude, I'm on fire today.
Pretty much what the marshmallow said. Rather than sensing the imminent burn, Cartman does what he does best, pushes his luck. When class is over and Wendy's hanging up breast cancer awareness posters, he doubles down on his antics. And shocker, Wendy snaps, because there's only so long one can stand Cartman's gremlin voice.
You'd better shut up or I'll make you shut up.
What are you gonna do about it, Wendy?
I'm gonna kick your ass. That's what I'm gonna do.
Oh boy.
Now, we all know middle school threats are usually as empty as New Year's resolutions, but Wendy means business. And Cartman, instead of de-escalating like a rational person, which sadly he is not, he throws gasoline into the fire, solidifying the impending beatdown he's about to receive.
As soon as that bell rings, we do it outside. You got that?
Oh, it's on.
You're gonna Die!
After that, we get Butters running around school like a town crier, the news spreads like wildfire, and the fight's pretty much set in stone. Now, up till this point, Cartman still hasn't taken things seriously as he expects Wendy to back off from the fight. However, it soon becomes obvious, thanks to her intense stare down at the cafeteria, that she fully intends to see this fight through. And that, my friends, is the face of someone who knows he's messed up. So Cartman's fate boils down to 3 possibilities. 1, beat Wendy and look like the world's biggest misogynist. 2, back out and become the official school coward. And 3, get absolutely obliterated by Wendy, and as Butters puts it,
If you got beat up by a girl, everyone would think you were...
which is basically 9/11 for Eric Cartman's ego. Faced with these oh-so-terrible options, Cartman finally decides to apologize to Wendy, except of course it's Cartman, so even his apology is half-assed.
I don't want to fight you after school. I'm sorry.
If you're really sorry, you can say it in front of everyone.
Might as well wait for pigs to fly. After several failed attempts to weasel out of the fight, including bribery, faking a muscular disorder, and eating his own underwear, which, trust me, do not visualize that, detention turns out to be the only way out for Cartman, which he earns by crapping on Mr. Garrison's desk. Because even in his most desperate of hours, Cartman is still a pain in the ass. So he gets detention, obviously, and it seems as though he's home and dry. But since a lot of people are eager to see the fight, Craig and the boys play Booker of the Year and move the fight to the next morning.
Tomorrow morning, you die tomorrow morning.
2 words, folks. Absolutely screwed. But his panicking doesn't last long because he's got one ace up his sleeve, his mom. And since he's basically front runner for Actor of the Year in South Park, he puts on a show that solidifies Wendy as the villain in his story.
I want to be your friend. I don't have that many friends at school.
I mean, the collective IQ of the adults in the show is like 50, so it's no surprise that they fall for that. Next morning, Cartman struts into class in his usual gloating self and begins taunting Wendy. But just when she's one jibe away from popping a nerve, she gets called to the principal's office, and to her surprise, it's not a beration session, but a pep talk.
Cancer is pure evil. It is a fat little lump that needs to be destroyed. You have to fight it.
And you know what else starts with C and fits that description? Safe to say Wendy got the memo. As she leaves the principal's office, heads straight to the playground and absolutely obliterates Cartman. Luckily for him, Mr. Mackey arrives in time before Wendy can finish the job. She walks away from the scene, leaving a bruised up Cartman to pick up the pieces of his shattered ego, and let's just say it was quite the sight to behold.
My school life is over because now all the guys don't think I'm cute. Dude, we never thought you were cool.
Which of course leads to Cartman forming the narrative in his head that they're all saying that because they like him and they don't want him to feel bad, and so he leaves the playground with a bloody smile and delusional as ever, only this time he can pin it on his CTE. But what he can't pin on any head injury is the mental gymnastics on display in Cartman Sucks.
Dude, how is putting Butters' wiener in your mouth getting him? Because that makes Butters gay now. No, dude, that makes you gay. What?
That's our guy, all right. And since there's a lot of hot dog activity in this episode, I'll do my best to keep things PG-ish. It all starts with Cartman proudly showing off his scrapbook of pranks he's pulled on Butters, basically his personal highlight reel of bad decisions, except this one has a little extra flesh. Not content with flashing his butt at a sleeping Butters, Cartman decides the next logical step forward is to put Butters' wiener in his mouth while snapping a picture. But before he can pitch this genius idea to Stan, Kyle, and Kenny, Butters walks in ready for their little sleepover. Kyle, being the voice of reason, tries to warn Butters about Cartman's master plan, which unsurprisingly ends poorly.
What do you mean? I mean that what he means is that he's jealous that you've taken his place as my new best friend. But grow up, Kyle. Yeah, grow up, Kyle.
A brain as smooth as butter. Really living up to that name, huh? So Kyle storms off without finishing his warning, which honestly would have saved everyone involved a whole lot of hassle, and me a lot of breath. And so Cartman's plan goes through. He takes the picture, arming him with an entry in a scrapbook to showcase to the boys.
I waited till he was totally asleep, right? And I pulled down his pants, and then I took a picture of his wiener in my mouth.
First off, sexual assault. Secondly, there's something that has to be said about Cartman's ability to be very crafty and very foolish at the same time. Stan and Kyle immediately point out the obvious flaw in Cartman's logic, and you can almost hear his brain short-circuiting as he realizes what he's just done. After a back and forth about Cartman's new supposed sexual orientation, Kyle decides to use the opportunity to mess with Cartman.
The only way you can cancel it out is to get Butters to put your wiener in his mouth.
Which apparently cancels out the gay polarity, which is as absurd as it sounds. And since absurdity is Cartman's bread and butter, he completely buys the theory and rushes to trick Butters into a position that even with context can only be interpreted one way.
Butters!
Whoa, hey, Dad!
Butters, what are you doing?
I'm getting a surprise.
Him pointing out his mouth absolutely killed me, by the way. And also his dad, who immediately declares his son bi-curious and ships him off to Camp New Grace to pray away the gay. Cartman, on the other hand, finally decides to do his own research, at which point he discovers that there's no such thing as gay polarity. However, there's still the very real picture of him with Butters' wiener in his mouth, and since he was dumb enough to show Stan and the boys, you best believe they're not about to let him live it down.
You guys, please don't tell anybody.
We won't tell anybody as long as you're super nice to us every day from now on.
You might as well ask him to jump off a bridge. Knowing the obvious limits to his theatrics, and by that I mean saying anything nice about Kyle, Cartman decides to go with Plan B, which involves photoshopping Kyle's face onto his own in the incriminating picture. And since Karma loves to dunk on Cartman, the photo mysteriously goes missing, and so naturally he blames Kyle.
What did you do with my picture?
Knock it off. I don't have your stupid picture.
Convinced Kyle stole it, Cartman tries everything to get the picture back, including involving the police and his parents. Both plans flop as Kyle truly does not have it, and after his typical rant about Jews, Cartman settles for the nuclear option.
I'm gonna print out another copy of that picture and show it to the class myself.
The next morning, he heads to school and gives a presentation on his photography endeavors, which surprisingly includes some very nicely taken photos, and of course, the photo in question at the very last slide. Jaws drop to the floor. Cartman tries to spin it as a statement on the war on Iraq, and Mr. Mackey swoops in just in time to put the cherry on top.
We got an emergency message from your mother. Kyle didn't have it after all. Found it under your desk.
That is the absolute ultimate form of poetic justice, undoubtedly going down as one of the worst days of Cartman's life. Moving on, we turn our attention to Stunning and Brave, where we witness firsthand what a broken Cartman looks like.
Cartman? We can't beat him, you guys. PC Principal is too strong.
And the beatdowns have returned. They were not gone for long. So it all begins with an emergency all-school meeting where Mr. Mackey announced that thanks to a student referring to as a hot Cosby, creative but dark, Principal Victoria has been fired and replaced with a guy simply known as PC Principal. Cue the collective gasps, at which point PC Principal struts in like he's a 90s sports drink commercial. He snatches the mic from Mr. Mackey, and the rest is pretty much history.
I'm here because this place is lost in a time warp.
And by that, he means all the slurs, bigotry, and whatnot you'd normally encounter whilst roaming the halls of the school. From the jump, it becomes pretty obvious that he and Cartman are surely on a collision course, but before then, there's the matter of Kyle. The next day, Stan, Kyle, and Kenny are doing their usual hallway loitering when Butters rolls up and fills them in on Cartman, who, to no one's surprise, has earned himself 4 days of detention. Kyle, of course, is happy with the recent developments up until an announcement is made.
Will Kyle Broflovsky report to the principal's office immediately, okay?
So he heads to the principal's office where he finds out, along with his dad who's been summoned, that he's earned himself 2 weeks of detention for words he said to another girl. And considering that Cartman only got 4 days for whatever crazy he's most definitely did, you'd expect Kyle's words to be something on the extreme side, but as it turns out, his cardinal sin is, well, it's saying this.
I don't think Caitlyn Jenner is a hero.
Yeah, not exactly what I'd call a chill guy, I don't know about you. Kyle's dad tries to calm things down, at which point him and Kyle are chased out of the office by PC Principal. Later that day, Kyle and the boys finally run into Cartman, and while you'd expect him to be hatching a plan to get back at PC Principal, this time around it seems like he doesn't have an appetite for any type of uprising whatsoever.
Aren't you going to, go do something about this new principal?
I've already got 4 days of detention. I don't want any more. I'm gonna start following the rules.
Unfortunately, Cartman's never been great at sticking to good decisions, and so after Stan and Kyle pump him up with Tom Brady's analogies because nothing inspires rebellion like a star quarterback, Cartman decides to take on PC Principal. So he sneaks into the faculty bathroom with Butters' underwear because, of course, waits for PC Principal to come in and use the urinal, at which point he sets him up for the perfect blackmail.
PC Principal, you have Butters' underwear and now... Oh my gosh, it's got your DNA all over it. This certainly doesn't look good for you.
Except it just so happens to not be that effective, because while normal people in the situation would be absolutely panicking, PC Principal isn't exactly who you'd call normal. So when Cartman uses the word spokesman during his shakedown, the result is, well, see for yourself.
Did you just say spokesman when women are just as capable of selling sandwiches as anyone?
I mean, who hasn't slammed kids across bathroom walls defending their ideology? Can we cut that? By the time the smoke clears, Cartman's a human pancake, and the boys come in to visit him later, at which point he advises them to all surrender to the principal and just accept the new order of things. But of course, the madness does not end there. PC Principal and his band of woke warriors, aka the PC Bros, decide to haze Kyle. They break into his room at night, totally normal behavior, tie him to a tree, and doodle wieners on his face. Word soon reaches Cartman that Kyle is being tormented, and I think we all know what happens next.
Kyle? My friend, Kyle?
Cue the battle music. From here, we basically enter into peak Cartman territory with a plan straight out of Mad Max. It features pregnant Mexican women, taco cannons, Syrian refugee children, Jared Fogle, and Chinese drivers. One unhinged Clash of Clans campaign later, and Kyle is forced to swoop in and save the day with 5 magic words.
Caitlyn Jenner is a hero.
See? Not so hard. Only maybe you should have said it earlier before Cartman was, destroyed. The episode ends with the entire town clapping for Kyle, including Cartman. PC Principal surprisingly still a free man, and Cartman still has a few broken bones that need healing. Still on the topic of Cartman's comeuppance, the next episode on our list is none other than Cartman Land.
I'm so happy.
Ah, sweet summer child. Enjoy it while it lasts. It all begins when Cartman's grandmother passes away. After attending the funeral, he and his mom attend his late grandma's will hearing, where he learns he's inherited $1 million. No thanks to the rest of her relatives, likely to blow it all on crack. Now, most parents would squirrel that cash away for their kid's future, college, or house, therapy for being Cartman. But since Mrs. Cartman isn't exactly the bastion of sensible parenting, Cartman gets his grubby hands on the cash and buys a whole amusement park. But not for the reason you might think.
No. I'm buying it to keep people out. Forever it has been my dream to have my very own theme park, so that I could be alone in it all day, every day.
Considering I once waited 2 hours for a ride that lasted 90 seconds, I can't even fault him for this. While Cartman's living in his own introvert fantasy, Kyle's stuck in a personal hell. Not only is he suffering from a hemorrhoid that could probably star in its own medical drama, but now he has to watch Kyle win at life.
I have a hemorrhoid, and Cartman has his own theme park.
Well, when you put it like that, it does sound like you're the butt of a cosmic joke. Stan tries to cheer him up in the most effective way possible, watching Terrence and Philip fart their way through some cartoon nonsense. But as they say, one often meets their destiny on the road they take to avoid it, which just so happens to be the case when the commercials come on.
So come on down to Cartman Land now, but don't plan on getting past the parking lot. So much to do at Cartman Land, but you can't come, especially you, Stan Cat.
I'm sorry, but composing a jingle just to rub it in their faces is absolutely nasty work. As expected, Stan and Kyle decide to crash out and break into Cartman Land, but breaking into a fortress of solitude is tricky, especially when one of you is suffering from an explosive medical condition. It's not funny.
Oh God, I popped it! Oh, it hurts! What the hell are you doing? Oh God, get me off of here!
Yeah, safe to say, it's not been a good week for Kyle. Thanks to Stan and Kyle sneaking into the park, Cartman quickly realizes that keeping people out isn't as simple as building fences, and so he hires a security guard to keep watch, but surprise, surprise, security guards don't work for free or for free park rides. So Cartman is forced to let 2 people into the park each day just to cover the guard's salary. While Cartman continues his introverted fantasy, Kyle is having the absolute worst time of his life. His hemorrhoid has gotten so bad that he's landed in the hospital. Stan attempts to cheer him up, but this time around it doesn't work, as Kyle's pretty much spiritually wrecked at this point.
You see, if someone like Cartman can get $1 million in his own theme park, then there is no God.
I have no words, man. With the universe having put Kyle through the ringer, it quickly turns its attention to Cartman, who's back at Cartman Land, and he's learning the harsh reality of park management, that's for sure. Broken rides need fixing, staff needs feeding. This means letting in more guests, and before you know it, his once exclusive sanctuary is starting to look a lot like every other amusement park in America. And what do amusement parks normally do? That's right, they make money, hopefully. Cartman's decision to let more people in turns into a huge success. The park's making so much money that local businesses start copying his strategy, basically turning Cartman into a modern-day amusement park Rockefeller, all while Kyle is stuck in bed overhearing it all.
Amazing. Eric Cartman is surely the financial genius of our time.
And I'm sure the mere thought of ending Kyle via his success would be enough to make Cartman dance, only he isn't aware of that fact. Plus, the very success of Cartman Land with the lines and crowded rides is everything Cartman hates. And so finally, in a fit of frustration, he decides to sell the park back to the original owner for his $1 million. And since the universe is done messing with Kyle and it has its eyes set on Cartman, the IRS swoops in just as he collects his money back.
I'm Frank Garrett with the IRS. You haven't kept records of your income or payout. Seize the assets.
Hey, that's my money!
Don't you just love corporate America? By the time they're done rolling out his bill, Cartman is left with basically nothing. And since he's already returned the park, he has no means of generating funds anymore. So basically, he was just better off leaving his money in a bank. Back at the hospital, Kyle is basically hanging by a thread, but then Stan bursts into the hospital and breaks the news to Kyle, and for good measure, rolls him down to the park just to watch Cartman crash out in real time.
It's not fair, I wanna die! You are up there.
You earned that, Kyle. You really did. Also, you earned that, Cartman. You really did. And if you thought Cartman got wrecked in the last episode, buckle up for Season 8, Episode 2's Awesome-O, because karma isn't just knocking on Cartman's door in this one, it's kicking it down and setting the place ablaze.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Get it up there good and deep.
I think it's safe to say that out of context, South Park clips really tend to look crazy. So we're treated to yet another Cartman scheme where he's disguised as a cardboard robot named Awesome-O 4000. His plan? Infiltrate Butters' life, play the role of a robot bestie, and dig up his most embarrassing secrets. Why? Because Cartman can't function unless he's emotionally traumatizing someone, and Butters is basically his favorite chew toy. Butters, being the human golden retriever he is, falls for it immediately and brings Awesome-O in. Wouldn't be surprised if he has some Greek blood in him if he's fallen for this obvious Trojan horse. But anyway, quickly the two of them begin their human-robot bonding time, which of course involves Cartman fishing for Butters' dirt while pretending to be beep-boop like a sentient Roomba. And naturally, the conversation turns to, well, Cartman himself.
One time he made me think a meteor had hit the Earth and convinced me to stay down in a bomb shelter for 3 days. That sucks.
Cartman's most evil schemes, coming full circle again. And just like the Scott Tenorman one, of course his doomsday prank comes back to bite him in the ass, because as it turns out, Butters has been hatching quite the revenge plot to get back at Cartman.
Yeah, and he's never gonna get me again. I know one of his secrets.
And not just any secret. It's a social nuke of a tape featuring Cartman dressed as Britney Spears, full drag and everything, locking lips with cardboard Justin Timberlake. At this point, the stakes couldn't be higher for Cartman. He's trapped in his own prank, sweating bullets inside that janky robot suit while trying to find the tape. And since he can't blow his cover until he finds the tape, you can already imagine this endless agony of his, as Butters pretty much uses him like the servant robot he disguised himself to be.
Hey, Awesome-O, I'd also like some celery sticks chopped up 2 inches long with peanut butter and raisins on top.
Cartman's stuck working crazy shifts at the Stotts residence with no breaks, no alone time, and no escape. Oh, did I mention he's starving as well? Like, toothpaste is a snack now kind of starving. You know what they say, you live by the prank, you fall by the prank. And just when you think things couldn't get any worse for Cartman, he ends up following Butters on a family trip to LA. Butters' parents, thinking this is some kind of elaborate bonding game, are like, sure, bring the robot. And since Cartman can't afford to lose that tape, he's forced to fly 30,000 feet in the air, stuck in a moldy piece of cardboard. By the time they land in Hollywood, Cartman is this close to losing it, and things spiral from there. Butters takes him all around LA to show him off, at which point he becomes a tourist attraction who's predicting sports scores and making puns. Hollywood execs hear about the robot and decide to put it to work churning out terrible movie ideas, most of which star Adam Sandler doing. I don't even know, man, but at least they paid him for his efforts.
You should split that money with Awesome-O. Oh, right. What are you gonna do with money, Awesome-O? Buy some robot pants?
Cartman is seething, Butters is thriving, and honestly, it's the role reversal we didn't know we needed. But just as Cartman's about to hit rock bottom, the military shows up. Why? Well, because obviously Awesome-O must be some advanced Japanese weapon. And what do to next-gen weapons made in Japan? Well, you chop them up to see how they work. So Cartman's stuck in a lab trying to explain that he's just a kid in a robot suit, but since the South Park universe features some of the most dumb adults in entertainment history, they're all convinced that Awesome-O is just so advanced, he thinks he's human. Thankfully, Butters isn't about to let his best friend get disassembled without a fight. He storms in for a rescue mission, which somehow ends in guns drawn, scientists bleeding out, and Butters sobbing like it's the finale of Marley and Me.
Don't kill him! He's my best friend! He's my best friend in the whole world!
At least the military here still has a heart. And then, because poetic justice is alive and well, Cartman's robot act comes crashing down in the dumbest way possible. A fart. Yep, one rogue toot in Awesome-O is no more. Cartman gets outed and the episode closes with a humiliation of biblical proportions, as the Britney Spears tape played in front of the entire town. Safe to say, Awesome-O 4000 might just be Cartman's biggest fail. But not all of his misfortunes are a product of one of his schemes. Like in Cartman's Silly Hate Crime 2000, he manages to score himself an express ticket to juvie.
Eric Cartman, you have been found guilty of committing a hate crime. I hereby sentence you to the Alamosa Juvenile Hall until you turn 21.
No!
That judge is clearly not his biggest fan. It all kicks off with what should have been a simple boys versus girls sled race down Phil Collins' hill. Yes, that Phil Collins. The hill's named after his Oscar bait Tarzan song. Naturally, the boys are confident because they got Cartman, whose sheer gravitational pull doubles as a built-in turbo booster. But then Token makes the fatal error of doing what we all do, pointing out Cartman's structural advantage.
Yeah, and with Cartman's enormously fat ass, the boys are sure to win.
You call me fat one more time, I'm gonna smack you in the head with this rock. Fat ass.
There goes detention, just sliding towards Cartman. And just like that, Token's got a black eye and Cartman's got a one-way ticket to Mr. Mackey's office where he earns himself 2 weeks of detention. But things go from bad to catastrophic when 2 FBI agents crash the party and declare that the rock-throwing incident is now officially a hate crime. In the blink of an eye, Cartman lands in federal court with the media quickly making him the poster child for racism, and knowing Cartman, he pretty much speedruns his way to a guilty verdict.
I hate hippies, and the way I always talk about protecting the earth and then wear their stupid bracelets. I hate them. I want to kick them in the nuts.
That's what happens when you leave Cartman unsupervised with a microphone. It'll either go to hippies, gingers, or Jews. The judge, clearly over it, sends Cartman on a trip to Alamosa Maximum Security Juvenile Hall until he's 21, because what better way to teach a 10-year-old boy a lesson than locking him up until he's old enough to rent a U-Haul? Cartman naturally tries to pull the oldest trick in the book, fleeing the country. His getaway vehicle? Kenny's Go-Go Action Bronco. It's battery-powered, maxes out at 2 miles an hour, and is somehow the most Cartman escape plan imaginable.
We're gonna make it, Kenny. We're gonna make it to Mexico. Oh, God damn it.
Universe 1, Cartman 0. With nowhere left to run, Cartman is dragged back to Juvie where he meets Romper Stomper, a juvenile prison hustler who earned his name by quite literally stomping around in yellow pails. Meanwhile, back in South Park, the boys are struggling in Cartman's absence. They've replaced him with Clyde, but their sled won't budge because Clyde isn't fat enough. And so, out of desperation to not get owned by the girls, they try to spring Cartman out with a cake containing a file, because when you're in a cartoon, you do cartoon things. Unsurprisingly, that plan fails, and so Kyle and Stan take a different route, convincing Token to forgive Cartman. The only problem is, it's not in Token's hands, as only the governor can pardon Cartman. And I think we all know what comes next.
We should all be treated the same, with the same laws, for in that way, Cartman can be freed from prison and we'll have a chance to win the sledding race on Thursday.
You know, it's the poster child for dysfunction, but at least South Park has open government offices. That's sadly pretty rare. Back in Juvie, Cartman's living out his Shawshank Redemption fantasies. He's smuggling contraband through unconventional means and begging Romper Stomper to help him break out. After one too many trips to the toilet, and by that I mean pooping out smuggled contrabands like a golden goose, Romper lays it squarely to Cartman. He's never getting out. Which of course causes Cartman to spiral into a full-blown weeping session about wanting his mom. Romper gets a change of heart and decides to help him break out anyway. But of course, there's only so long the two of them can outrun the police for. But luckily for Cartman, he's already been pardoned by the governor.
You'll never take us alive.
But you've been pardoned by the governor.
Oh, sweet. Later, dudes.
And while you might have think that Juvie humbled Cartman, he quickly proves otherwise. Armed with Romper Stomper's yellow bucket shoes, he returns to the sledding race just in time to sabotage the girls' team. Their sled flies off a cliff, Lizzie gets carried away by a bear, and the boys claim victory. The episode ends with Cartman promising to never take his friends for granted again, but in true Cartman fashion, he breaks that promise immediately.
Let's all hear it for Cartman's big fat ass. Oh, do British people count as an ethnicity for hate crimes? Nah, sweet.
From Cartman's usual chaos to a full-blown domestic war zone, we land in Season 10, Episode 7, where Leanne finally decides to confront her dictator of a son.
Mom, are you deaf? Somebody's at the door.
Yes, I think it's the nanny, Poopsikins.
Yes, the classic Xbox player dissing his mom energy. Good times. The chaos kicks off with Mr. Mackey, who's at his wit's end, understandably. After one too many Eric Cartman specials, when Leanne's called in, her emotional breakdown is so dramatic, you half expect her to start auditioning for Days of Our Lives, at which point Mr. Mackey extends her a lifeline via the Nanny 911 show.
This 8-year-old son of a single parent just won't behave.
Wir müssen die Juden erschlagen.
You can kill the man, folks, but never the idea. Cartman really shows the worst of humanity at like all times. So Nanny Stella swoops in with the energy as someone who can tame actual lions, and she probably has. But as we know, it's men who sits at the top of the food chain, with Cartman pretty much heads and shoulders above everyone else. Stella tries the usual Nanny McPhee tactics, which as expected fails miserably. Within minutes of stepping foot into his territory, Cartman reduces her to a puddle of despair. He spits, he insults, he questions her life choices, and by the time he's done, the only thing left is to call 911.
Must be hard on you, knowing that the years are ticking away, and all the while your uterus slowly shriveling away, drying up, becoming totally worthless.
The fact that his mom is in the background like she's watching reruns of Frasier pretty much sums it all up for you. And just like that, Nanny Stella crashes out and is out the door. You can almost hear the production crew wondering if their insurance covers emotional trauma. But hey, don't worry, Super Nanny's here to save the day. Or so we thought. By the end of her stint, she's chewing on her own feces in a padded cell. Yeah, Cartman doesn't just break people, he shatters them into a million pieces and blowtorches the remains for good measure. Now, thanks to Cartman's track record of nuking people's minds, no nanny within a 10-kilometer radius wants to touch them with a 10-foot pole. Not like they could if they were using a 10-foot pole and he was 10 kilometers away. Anyway, Leanne is just about to give up completely, at which point the doctor at the psych ward presents her with one final option. And since desperate times call for the dog whisperer, Caesar Millen steps up as the next man to face Eric Cartman. Caesar's approach? Treat Cartman like the feral chihuahua he is. A leash, neck nips, long walks to burn energy. It's genius, it's absurd, and disturbingly effective. For the first time, Cartman isn't in control, and he hates it. So much so, he runs away from home, which turns out to be a bad idea because none of his friends want to take him in, so he ends up on the streets.
It's bullcrap! Mom will break soon. I can outlast her.
No, he cannot. Homeless and humbled, well, sort of, Cartman slinks back only to find Caesar still holding court. And this is where Leanne finally grows a backbone, or at least borrows one from Caesar. She shuts Cartman down with a firm, dominating presence, and for the first time in, well, forever, Cartman finally submits.
See, this is the behavior we've been looking for. This is a relaxed, submissive state.
But let's not get too excited here, as this is Eric Cartman we're talking about, so of course his version of growth is plotting matricide. After all, being made to eat broccoli is as good as attempting to murder him as anything else is. He even tries recruiting the boys for Operation Matricide. Naturally, they decline, leaving Eric to handle it solo. That night, he sneaks into a room and the whole scene plays out like a fever dream, complete with black vomit that might be his repressed evil literally leaving his body.
Doesn't revolve around me.
Wow, maybe he was just possessed this entire time. By morning, Cartman's a changed man, eating balanced breakfast, saying please, and doing homework like a Stepford child. Leanne's over the moon, but just as you think Caesar's won the day, she blows it all by falling for Caesar.
But I thought we were becoming friends.
No, not really. You're just a client. Well, good luck to you. Gotta go.
Yep, desperate loneliness really rears its ugly head, and Leanne reverts to her spineless ways. With Caesar gone, it takes all of 2 seconds for Cartman to reclaim his throne. One Mega Ranger turns into 2. Before you know it, Cartman's back to his old self, sinister grin and all. It was fun while it lasted. The craziness continues in Season 10, Episode 6, where Man Bear Pig, or as some would call it, the single greatest threat to humanity, takes center stage.
Don't worry, it's not really Man Bear Pig. It's me, Al Gore.
Clearly, someone isn't thriving in retirement. The episode begins with Mr. Mackey gathering all the kids in the gymnasium to hear from none other than former Vice President Al Gore, who of course is now a cryptid crusader. So his crusade is in town to warn South Park Elementary about the mythical beast known as Man Bear Pig, and naturally, no one takes him seriously because it's Man Bear Pig.
Man Bear Pig is very real, and he most certainly exists. I'm cereal.
Half man, half bear, half pig. Basic biology just took a vacation. Al Gore continues to spiral into a parody, at which point he runs into Stan and the boys playing basketball. After one over-the-top pitch, followed by a guilt-ridden late-night sob fest, Stan's guilt gets the better of him, and he agrees to humor Gore and attend his emergency Man-Bear-Pig meeting. The rest of the boys, not so enthusiastic.
Dude, why are we going to hang out with this guy? Come on, you guys. Al Gore doesn't have any friends. We'll just make an appearance at his little meeting and then we'll go.
Like, fair enough, he is the former VP, but come on, stranger danger, anyone? So they head into Al Gore's control center, a seedy motel room that screams midlife crisis. Just as the boys are regretting their life choice, the Man Bear Pig warning signal goes off. Gore insists that they follow him to the Cave of the Winds, where the signal supposedly points to. At first they're reluctant, but the prospect of skipping school is enough to get everyone on board. By now, the red flags are flapping in gale force winds, and the boys choosing to ignore them proves to be costly. They arrive at the Cave of Winds, and it's at this point that things go from mildly unhinged to certifiably insane. Al Gore, armed with his trusty navigation system, mistakes the sound of literal wind for Man Bear Pig. He panics, whips out his gun, and enters a state of pure lunacy.
No! Leave them alone, you goddamn Man Bear Pig!
On a side note, one thing I just love about South Park is how each second is packed with so much craziness that it sometimes feels like you're no more watching the same episode you just were. So things go off the rails pretty quickly, leaving the boys firmly in survival mode. While the boys are trying to figure out how to escape, Cartman stumbles across a treasure chest, and as you'd expect, his first thought is to hoard it all for himself, so he goes all Smeagol and ends up storing his newfound treasure in the biggest chest he has on him, his stomach. Turns out logic left the building the second Al Gore entered it. While Cartman's off gorging himself, the rest of the boys are stuck trying to figure out how to escape before Al Gore's next harebrained idea puts them 6 feet under, because he's cooked up what is easily the worst idea to date, as his grand plan to kill Man Bear Pig now involves flooding the cave. Never mind the small detail that there are actual children down there, but hey, priorities, right? As the water rises, Cartman's plan literally weighs him down. Turns out eating an entire chest of fake treasure has some side effects. Cartman, now so bloated he looks like a human beanbag, has to be hauled out by Stan and Kyle, at which point their pulley system fails and Kyle is forced to drag Cartman's huge frame to safety.
Okay, just have to save me. I need your help. No, you just have to save me.
Honestly, if you had to distill their entire friendship into one moment, this would be that moment. Finally, the boys surface, barely alive, and Al Gore, well, he's too busy patting himself on the back for defeating Man-Bear Pig to notice the absolute carnage he's caused. At which point, Stan finally snaps and lays it out for Al Gore as plainly as he can.
I was nice to you because I felt sorry for you because you don't have any friends. You just used Man-Bear Pig as a way to get attention for yourself because you're a loser.
And Gore's response to that, well, in his mind, he sees himself as the guy who stopped Man-Bear Pig alone. He could hardly be a loser. Turns out Cartman has some stiff competition for the delusional nut job of the year. Speaking of Cartman, the episode ends with him crapping out every last piece of treasure he swallowed, and because irony has a twisted sense of humor, the loot's total value turns out to be a whopping $14. I guess you could call that a crappy investment. Of course, our list wouldn't be complete without the infamous iPad episode known as Human Centipede.
Go ahead, Mom. Me right here in the Best Buy. Go on, Mom. Me.
It'll all make sense as we continue. Or probably not. The episode starts with the great American iPad frenzy. Everyone's flaunting their shiny new tablets, except Cartman, who, instead of admitting he doesn't have one, tries to fake it by gluing a piece of glass to an iPad cover. Things are looking great, and Cartman is turning his nose up at the iPadless kids in school, up until Craig swoops in to burst his bubble. You get the classic Cartman denial/meltdown, followed by him dashing home to torment his mom.
You said I had to wait till my birthday so the one I rubbed in everyone's faces today isn't real, and tomorrow everyone's gonna call me a liar.
Sounds like a you problem, don't you think? Elsewhere, Kyle's about to nosedive straight into body horror territory. You know those pesky terms and conditions pop-ups we all ignore? Well, Kyle's sure why not attitude lands him in a nightmare that even Kafka would call a bit much. So he gets bagged by Apple reps and wakes up in a cell with two strangers, only to learn he's now part of an experimental product. The Human Centipede, and let's just say it involves a Japanese man, a Caucasian woman, and Kyle himself all stitched together into a literal human centipede.
I give you the Human Centipede!
Think different? More like think depraved. And if you think this is where the story peaks, you haven't seen nothing yet, partner. Back in South Park, Cartman's dragging his mom to Best Buy for an iPad, but when she offers him a cheaper alternative, he doesn't just whine, he goes on a full rant so explicit that it makes a 50 Shades of Grey dialogue seem subtle.
I need you to show me what you want to do to me.
One too many public rants about being you-know-whatted by his mom, and Cartman lands himself as a guest on Dr. Phil, where he plays the victim so well you think he's auditioning for an Oscar, but somehow the audience is on his side. Because this is Cartman's world, and logic doesn't need to apply.
You f your son and you won't even give him a kiss?
If I was gonna f my son, I'd kiss him first.
Nothing brings out the worst in people like daytime television. By the time Cartman is done with his performance, Apple and Best Buy somehow get involved and decide to give Cartman a gift, which just so happens to be the first ever Human Centipede. And before I get comments, yes, I know it's Human Centipede, but I just think my way sounds better, okay? I always thought it. Anyway, meanwhile, back in South Park, Gerald, being the responsible dad he sometimes is, teams up with the Apple geniuses. Now, if you're expecting them to just void Kyle's contract like normal tech support, you clearly haven't been paying attention. Instead, we get rituals, because what is technology without a bit of mumbo-jumbo sprinkled on top?
What the hell are they doing now?
The geniuses are performing the Torah and Ra. It's future stuff.
So I might have been a genius all along. Let's go. Anywho, so the geniuses come up with a solution to save Kyle. If Gerald joins Apple, he can create a family plan that automatically covers Kyle, his son, and voids all existing agreements. After a bit of reluctance, because you know how adults are with new tech, Gerald ends up joining Apple. And it is at this point that things come crashing down. Just as Cartman's about to bask in this tech-fueled glory, Gerald swoops in, Kyle gets rescued, and Cartman's grand prize gets snatched away in the blink of an eye.
Hey, what is this, some kind of sick prank? I get the greatest thing ever, just have it taken away?
And by that he means a device that handles all his digital needs and poops in Kyle's mouth. And since Cartman has such a potty mouth, you know he can't resist a few more F-bombs which he directs God's way. Only the big man upstairs isn't as spineless as Leanne.
How about a little courtesy lick next time you decide to f me?
Between a Kyle prayer being answered and the big man himself tired of Cartman, I'm going 50-50. The episode ends with Cartman in a hospital bed, battered and bruised. Meanwhile, Leanne is casually flipping through a magazine by his bedside, clearly over the whole ordeal. So what do we learn here? Apple might own our souls, Cartman's self-pity knows no bounds, and never, ever skim the terms and conditions. There you have it, that's all for today. But if you're still craving some crazy Eric Cartman moments, check out this other video to see just how unhinged he can get.